And g'day, legends. It is Jai, that Aussie metal guy here with Crannk.com. So today, tonight, wherever you are in the world, it's a great pleasure that I'm getting to have a chat with Jimmy Viola from the heart of Philadelphia's grimy underground, which comes a force that merges the feral bite of first wave black metal with the technical venom of thrash and the allure of progressive dissonance. We do have Jimmy, as I mentioned, from Wild Beyond, born out of rehearsal rooms and basement sanctuaries. Wild Beyond's 2023 debut album cracked open a new dimension in American black metal, raw, urgent, and utterly alive. But with this new EP, Black Sights and Lower Chambers, which was released October 17th via Fiadh Productions, the trio have gone deeper into the subterranean psyche. The record hums with analog sorcery and esoteric tension. Its sound shaped by both chaos and control. At the center of the sonic alchemy does stand my friend Jimmy Viola, bassist, keyboardist, engineer, and all-round good fella. Jimmy, cheers for joining me, mate.
That was a hell of an intro. Thank you.
Mate, this is an absolute bloody pleasure, man. Spun out because I'd come across you guys with that debut album and it absolutely fucking blew me away, man. I love black metal. I've come more into black metal as I've got older. Tell me a little bit about how you guys initially started this project.
Yeah, so in 2021, I had quit my previous band, Basilisk, and I let it know among the community that I was on the prowl for another band. And like a few weeks later, I got a phone call from my buddy Zeshik, who plays in some bands like Sonia and Cross Ripper. And he says, Jim, my boy Eddie is looking for a new project. It's playing guitar and vocals, and he's looking for a bass player. And I said, fuck yeah, because Eddie and Jeshik, to connect the dots a little bit, they had played in this band for like 15 years, starting when they were 11 years old in Philadelphia Catholic boys' school in like the early 2000s called Infernal Stronghold. And so they had always been like an underground staple of the Philadelphia music community. And of course, Eddie also plays in Daiva. They put out some banger records as well. So I was more than eager to join his ranks and see what was cooking. And that was it. Kind of went from there. We met a few times. We She showed me some riffs in his basement. So I was truly born in smoky basements. And then we got involved with Evan Madden, who we also knew from years. He's played in a ton of bands like Whoa, Woods of Ypres. And at first, we didn't think that Evan would even want to do it because he was so busy, and we thought he'd be too good. He was like, he doesn't want to play with us. He's way too good of a drummer. But he also is a huge black metal head. Like one of his favorite drummers is Nick Barker from Dimmu Borgir, and it just kind of clicked, and we were off and running.
Yeah, it's got a really great sound. I didn't realize who was in the band because I initially got the album and I'm like, man, I like doing that, just putting in albums initially and not knowing too much about it. And then I looked into who you guys were. I was like, fuck, man, there's definitely some musical pedigree in you guys as well. Because I'd heard of all those bands that you were in before as well. So super cool bands. And you did kind of describe the sound as kind of the some of the recording spaces and sounds, especially for Black Sights and Lower Chambers, from some of the other interviews and shit I've had a look at, is kind of like as abysmal basements, smoke choked rehearsal rooms. What kind of drew you to those kind of environments for this, and how do they influence the energy for you guys and with this record?
Yeah, I think black metal has always been punk rock and a bit punk around the edges or rough around the edges. In this room where I'm doing it now, we laid down vocals and guitars and keyboards. So I think that the do-it-yourself ethos definitely bled into it a bit, and even more so on this EP. So our first album we had recorded in a studio, and we did the proper like studio experience at a place called Permanent Hearing Damage in Philadelphia. And that was a cool experience because we had never played live. We were specifically set on putting an album out first before we even thought about hitting the stage. And in a sense, we were still kind of figuring our sound out. And since then, the year and a half since 2023's debut, we've had time to play live. We've been able to cohesively together arrange songs and not just writing them in sort of a vacuum by ourselves. And we've had a chance to debut these songs live and really see how they work when they're like test driven to a live audience. So that was sort of the spirit of this recording. And then from a technical standpoint, we were in the midst of, I suppose the term would be pre-production for our next full-length LP. which we'll be beginning to record drums in early December. So that's exciting. And we had set out to record the drums and essentially demo the next full-length LP in our friend Doug's basement because he happened to have another studio space that he wanted to test run. And so that was sort of the trade-off. He was like, Evan, you guys can record here, but you need to like use my drum set and use my recording stuff. And so that was where we met halfway. And so the three songs, four songs, I guess, if you don't count the instrumental, the four songs on the EP were part of that session of, I guess, demoing the next full-length album. And we just kind of realized like we really like the songs that are on the EP. We felt that it was worth sharing to let people know that we're still out there and still kicking and to kind of give a little bit of a preview. And so that was a success in itself. And then it also kind of got us ready. It was like a test drive for just recording next time for the full length that's going to come in a few months or I guess next year. So
Yeah, and
that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, I think just the spirit of punk rock, doing it yourself with this EP and rolling our sleeves up.
yeah, that's the way. And black metal, like traditional old school black metal and Wild Beyond sound, does kind of thrive on, as we mentioned, a little bit of that imperfection, that feeling of a little bit of danger in the mix. How do you walk the line between rawness and readability when you're engineering this music as well?
Yeah, it was a learning experience for me as well. I think that for us, because we played live, we know how we sound and we know how we want it to sound. With my bass tone, the answer is distorted bass. So that always keeps it sounding a little bit slimy and gross and with teeth. And same thing with Ed. Like we straight up just put the microphone next to his amplifier. We had a Shure SM57. This guy right here, I just happened to have it nearby because I was recording with it for another project. And that's kind of like one of the industry standards for just capturing a good, clean signal. And yeah, just mic to the amp. Just got the just what you heard is what we were playing. So yeah, I think, and we didn't spend too much time. We didn't do any like digital plugins. We didn't spend too much time like scrutinizing it because we wanted it to sound raw and because we had played live and had definitely dialed in our tones live with our amplifiers and stuff. It was sort of like a plug in and play thing.
Yeah, and then you're handling both bass and synths on this record, two very different frequency worlds. How do you balance low end weight with that atmosphere that does define the sound for Wild Beyond?
Yeah, so I mean, we had somebody mix it. I'm still learning to mix, so
Yeah.
that's they can do the frequency stuff, but my secret sauce is just using analog keyboards, a lot of stuff that I just find on the internet for $50 here and there, and just stuff from the 80s and 90s because the tones, I'm sort of limited by just the tones I can get out of the keyboard. So that helps me focus and it kind of lends itself to that retro quality. And I think also just not overdoing it with keyboards. Like it's throughout the album from the intro to the kind of culminating up to the Dimmu Borgir cover at the end, which has a lot of keyboards. But I also kept the keyboards here and there throughout the songs just to add a little bit of atmosphere and embellishment so it wouldn't sound too stark of a contrast to not have them.
Yeah, I love the use of keys you guys have in both releases so far. And the EP title, Black Sights and Lower Chambers, kind of carries this dual meaning. Kind of tell me what that kind of means for you. What does that represent to you sonically or philosophically?
Yeah, I think that I'm not even sure what the lyrics are about with with this song, but I know they're good. Eddie is a madman. He has this
Yep.
little black grimoire of just like lyrics that he has from over the years, which is really a fascinating way to write songs. Because for me, like for another band like Morgul Blade that I play in, like I'll write the songs and then I'll write the lyrics to the songs, and it's helpful for me to have like a guidepost through the music to think about the cadence and delivery. It's hard for me to just write lyrics without knowing like what the song is, just kind of writing them in space. But yeah, that's his method for sure, and he came up with the title because our first album was self-titled, so we kind of had to think about what this would be. And to me, when you have black sites and lower chambers, you have like the duality of like the physical and the mental realms of anguish. and suffering and dark places because, of course, with black sites, there's sort of the military or CIA shadowy organization connotation to it, and then lower chambers that can kind of pertain to the spiritual world. And I know that's something that Eddie had. Eddie was interested, and lyrically, there's a lot of that represented as well. They're open to interpretation, of course, but talking about the occult and the supernatural and the demonic, but then also the intersection of where there's historical precedent of military organizations, of government experiments, MK Ultra, Jack Parsons, Operation Paperclip. Like it's out there, it's fact. And so there is sort of that. It makes the lyrics a bit more real and creepy in the subject matter because there is some subject of factual basis, and we're not certainly not cheerleading or condoning any governments or organizations or things like that. But it comes from a real place, and of course, interpret as you will.
Exactly, and you. I won't even need to ask next question because I was talking about how you guys do blend the occult and the militaristic imagery as well, and creating that conceptual fusion as well, and the sound for it. So you just hit the nail on the head, mate. We're both thinking alike. And when you're composing those ambient and synth-driven moments, do you think of them as ritual spaces, accompany them to the music as well? How are you doing that, man, from that side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with the introduction song,
Yeah.
um, that was, I believe I wrote that since our very first show that we played at St. Vitus Bar in 2003. So that was an old song, old as in 2.5 years old or whatever. But that was something that I wanted to have play before we hit the stage, and we still do that now. So before every concert, you'll probably hear Dream State Abductions play if it's possible. And yeah, I think it sets the tone. It definitely has sort of like a Middle Eastern, Morbid Angel, Nile feel to it. And I think with all of our influences between all the black metal and death metal and thrash metal from the 80s and 90s, there's a long lineage of great albums that start off with creepy instrumentals. So I wanted to kind of bring that to the table without overdoing it. And on that song in particular, it's worth noting the album came out a few weeks before my grandmother passed away. Rest in peace. She was
Yeah.
93 years old. She had a great run, but I ended up having her Radio Shack keyboard because I would always play it when I visited. So that song in particular, I had played on my late grandmother's keyboard, which adds some of the spiritual black dimensions.
That's fucking beautiful, man. Rest in peace, dude. That's beautiful, though. Beautiful, beautiful fucking tribute, man. Tell me a little bit about the songwriting process for you guys. How does that start? To start with riffs, textures, a thematic spark? How does that go for you guys?
So Eddie and I both come up with riffs on our own, and we'll usually send it to each other. Eddie has like AI drum machine stuff that'll punch in, so it has these insane, silly drum parts. But I guess it helps him. It helps us kind of see where he's coming from. I'm more old school. I just record to a click track because I know Evan can play whatever, and it keeps it simple. I don't have the patience to program fake drum parts. So we'll send it to each other usually. We'll jam it live or jam it in our practice space and play it together. Usually Evan will be the most prepared and we'll be like figuring out the riffs that we wrote or how many times we play it, man. And we sort of just take it from there and workshop. Again, with this new album, we've been able to debut these songs live so we can really get a feeling for how they're performed and how the crowd reacts, see how spaces might drag and edit from there. But it's definitely been more collaborative this time around. Like there are songs on this EP where it's my riffs and then Eddie will add riffs or we'll have input and just with the editing and arrangement. So it's a lot more collaborative, which is cool.
Yeah, and then we mentioned a couple of times what a beast Evan Madden is behind the kit, and there's such rhythmic precision and movement. Tell me a little bit about his drumming and kind of how it shaped your approach to production and arrangement.
Altars of madness, indeed. Yeah, he's a machine. So I think I mentioned earlier when Eddie would send his first round of early demos before we had even become a band. I think Evan mentioned he wasn't going to play it or he didn't want to join unless he could actually play the songs because they were really, really fast. And of course, Eddie's demos had these silly AI drum parts or, Easy Drummer drum parts that were drumming software and not not something that Evan was meant to play at that speed with just the blast beats and everything. But sure enough, when we had our first practice, Evan was like playing the easy drum parts or the drum machine parts that were kind of just placeholders. And we're like, damn, dude. So yeah, we knew right off the bat he was a beast. And then just seeing him and experiencing how he plays, he definitely busts his ass and he's in there practicing day in and day out on his own and just keeping his chops up. And so that inspires us to also bring our A game and write music that's challenging but also fun and covers all the atmospheric bases. And with this album in particular, this EP rather, I know that Evan was real adamant about having the drum tone sound like Dimmu Borgir on the album and Throwing Darkness Triumphant, which of course we ended up covering one of the songs off that album. So that was sort of an excellent reference point to have for like the right kind of tone to fit the music.
Yeah, well, that Spellbound by the Devil from Dimmu Borgir cover is an absolute ripper and a great way to kind of to end the EP. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I recorded that and I never need to play those keyboard parts ever again.
Yeah, dude, we did mention a couple of times about the tone and atmosphere. You and Edward clearly share a deep obsession with the use of tone of atmosphere with the sound for Wild Beyond. How do you navigate the overlap between songwriting, performance, and production duties without stepping on each other's vision as well?
I think it's just a place of mutual respect and we come proper. We meet every Sunday. We've all been in the game for decades, if not several decades at this point. And it's about having fun,
Yeah.
really. We enjoy playing music, so we're not trying to be too image controlled or control freaks about things.
Yeah, dude. I'm looking back at the debut album versus this new EP. Where do you see the biggest shift in sound, intent, or philosophy for you guys?
Yeah, so the first album was really interesting because Eddie had picked up a guitar for like the first time in 5 years. Like he got a flying V during the pandemic and started playing, and he kind of had to like relearn to play guitar essentially. So I think that's kind of reflected in a lot of the music because they were his primary compositions, and it has a bit of an unorthodox, spastic feel to it because of that. And then also we had never played together either. So
Yeah.
the songs we basically rehearsed them enough to feel like we were ready to head into the studio, but it wasn't like we had a live show or we were definitely hungry to get this recorded so then we could start playing out live. So it happened in less than a year from our first meeting to it being released. So that all kind of had to do with the first album. And then in terms of this new one, the drum mix is definitely more massive. We wanted to have really big, thick sounding drums like the Burger, like I mentioned. So better drum tone, a little bit more rough around the edges, more keyboards, more atmosphere. And you can hear it. Not
Oh,
only
yeah.
like are the songs more melodic and a bit more cohesive and sort of evocative of 90s black metal that we all dig, but we had time to really jam it out with each other and get on the same page collaboratively and actually edit the songs and add our own riffs and arrangements and so forth. So I think just overall, it's a lot more of a cohesive effort, which people seem to be noticing.
Yeah, I noticed that as well because, as I said, I hammered the hell out of that debut album, but I didn't even realize who you guys were till afterwards. And then this EP, as you said, it does feel like a more collaborative effort. Like that was a ripping album, and this one has kind of stepped it up a notch more. So I'm really looking forward to where you kind of take it up from here as well, which must be exciting for you guys as well.
Yeah, we got our studio date for, I believe, the first or second week in December. And where we practice is also where there's the studio. So we're just going down the hallway from our usual space. So it's a bit of a home field advantage for sure. So yeah, we're stoked. We'll probably re-record these songs for the LP just for posterity, but we still have a whole like eight, nine, 10 other songs. And so yeah, we're really excited to put the rest of the songs to to the pressing of CD or vinyl or tape or whatever. And I think that people are going to be surprised because there's definitely like a common, more melodic 90s black metal theme for the three songs on the EP, which is why we grouped them. But the other songs and the new songs are all over the place. They still have those elements, but there's still a lot of chaos and fast, speedy, evil parts. So we're stoked to unleash those.
Damn straight. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your work, mate. Wild Beyond is an absolute ripper. I implore everybody to go out, grab this EP, bang it loud. The neighbors are going to want to hear it too. Jimmy, thank you so very much, man, for getting to chat to me about Wild Beyond. Really do appreciate it, mate. Any last words, shout outs, thank yous are all on you, my friend.
Wild fucking beyond. And yeah, thank you, Jay, and thanks to all the people that have listened to our music. Check it out. We'll be back with more.